Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet on the Geforce GTX 750 Ti. For performance monitoring, this time I won't be using cam due to Easy Anti-Cheat, which is the anti-cheat software this game uses, so in the meantime I'll be using MSI Afterburner. So Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, I'll be doing 1080p, 900p and 720p. To skip to not those sections of the video, check the description below. On 1080p I'm using the lowest settings. You'll notice that it drops below 30 frames per second when I'm fighting, even with the GTX 750 Ti being overclocked. Only on 1080p, on the other resolutions the overclock is disabled. But I noticed some issues with the options menu that I'll talk about in a second, because the game should be running better than this. Then on 900p I show you the highest settings, because with that the game is over 30 frames per second all the time, and by lowering the settings there's not a huge difference in performance. And finally at 720p I show you pretty much a mix between medium and high. I just said that changing the settings didn't change the performance that much, but on 720p it was like 56 FPS, and by just lowering a couple options there on 720p I managed to be at 60 frames per second much more often. It makes the game a little more consistent. But now I'm going to talk to you about what I ran into and the options menu. There seems to be a bug or something like that with the options menu or the graphical options in the game itself that made me re-record this video. That's why it took so long to upload it. So the first time I tried this game, for example on the 1050 Ti, I started with 1080p low settings and I noticed that I was getting pretty much 50 frames per second, something like that, 52. So I said, okay, I'll try the highest settings, let's see how high we can go. So I went back into the menu and I was getting 60 frames per second, which was weird because low settings was running worse. So I just restarted the game, went back into it, and I was getting 45 to 50 frames per second. So there it made more sense, but it was still running very similar to low settings. And what I found out is when I just jump into the game and start playing or something like that, and I go back into the menu to change the settings and then go back into the game once again, because you cannot change the settings by just pausing the game. You have to go all the way back into the main menu. It makes the game just run better. But once I restart the game, it runs worse. So what I did on my videos on this game is to just change the settings, restart the game and record that, since it's the worst case scenario. So hopefully they fix that later in a patch or something like that. But in the meantime, I'll just show you the worst case scenario. If you're not affected by this bug, good on you, have fun. You'll get just better performance compared to this video. Even if you manage to run this game at 60 frames per second, the frame times are very inconsistent. That means that you'll feel very inconsistent controls. It's very hard to aim sometimes. That means that the time a frame stays on screen will be very variable. It will stay between 16 and 18 milliseconds, but it will go up and down very quickly. So it's kind of hard to control. Even by just using VSync, that didn't help. VSync actually made it even worse. And since you're using a lot of mouse control because you're aiming all the time, it feels very inconsistent to play, even at 60 frames per second. I won't be able to talk very in depth about the options menu, but the game is capped at 60 frames per second. You can unlock the frame rate if you want, going into the config file, but I didn't do that because when you change a setting, it just resets back to 60. And one of the issues that I ran into with that as well, after some cinematics, the game just caps itself at 30 frames per second. I had to go back into the menu, select 60, and jump back into the game, which was very annoying. But so far, I'm in occlusion, shadows, depth of field and motion blur seem to be the biggest performance hits, if the game is actually working as intended with the options menu. And I didn't use a better CPU since the G4560 was more than enough to maintain 60 frames per second, as long as your GPU is enough. And you'll notice very different VRAM usages. When I'm just into the hub area, I get like 2 GB of usage on high, but once I go into the wasteland, it drops to 1 GB, which is kind of weird. Half the VRAM usage in a place where you fight, but in the hub area is like double the usage. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
わよ。
入った。発見。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。まだまだ。入った。倒した。やった。終わりだ。
いいじゃない。すごいのです。いいじゃない。
終わりだ。発見。
目的地に到着しました。
はっ。エネミーだ。エネミーだ。やっ。はっ。手を貸してくれ。クリティカル。
いいじゃない。マスター、トレジャーボックスです。ネームドエネミー標的だわ。いいじゃない。すごいのです。
アファシスオンに切る。
やるわね。嬉しいのです。
ヘイトを散らしてくれ。倒した。クリティカル。
すごいのです。いいじゃない。最高です。
手を貸してくれ。アファシスオンに切る。エアアイテムか。ついてるね。
到着っと。お疲れ様。
クリティカル。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。手を貸してくれ。クリティカル。
すごいのです。最高です。
アファシスオンに切る。クリティカル。
すごいすごい。なかなかいいアイテムね。おめでとう。
クリティカル。クリティカル。クリティカル。やっ。クリティカル。手を貸してくれ。
いいじゃない。すごいじゃない。
フレハありがとう。回復を頼む。
回復します。最高です。
オンに切る。アファシスオンに切る。
すごいじゃない。出れますです。
アファシス。やられたか。クリティカル。回復を頼む。負けたのか。
いるわ。使うわよ。せー
入った。
わーい、到着っと。お疲れ様。わーい、動いたな。
ああ、まだまだ終わりだ。レアアイテムか。ついてるね。エネミーだ。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。
わーい、
食いつける。
最高です。わーい、
肩慣らしかな。発見。
すごいすごい。
お疲れ様。
わ
エネミーだ。
ーい、目的到着しました。
やった。
すごいすごい。
お疲れ様。発見。スナイパー注意。
わーい、最高です。
倒した。お疲れ様。手を貸してくれ。はっ。
投げるわ投げるわ。
あっ。食いつける。アハス。やられたか。入った。
さすが私。
ヘイトを散らしてくれ。食いつける。
今助けるから。レイちゃん、ありがとう。
はっ。厄介だな。入った。
でー行くわよ。
へい。はっ。へい。
使うわよ。
へい。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。ネームドエネミーだ。倒せるかな。手を貸してくれ。
最高です。
手を貸してくれ。アバスオンに切る。
素晴らしいです。
アバス嬉しいよ。やった。倒した。
最高です。
アバス。ああ、手を貸してくれ。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。手を貸してくれ。たっへっはっはったっやっ。厄介だな。わっはっへっへっ。食いつける。食いつける。お疲れ様。たっ。
応援してます。
やっ。到着だ。お疲れ様。ヘイトを散らしてくれ。まだまだ。ああ。
グレネード行くわ。グレネード行くわ。
アファスオンに切る。
いいじゃない。
倒した。へい。厄介だな。へい。